Welcome to Infinite Storyverse. Today, we unravel a story draped in quiet longing, emotional risk, and that one irreversible moment when someone dares to step fully into their truth. This isn't just a tale of seduction. It's about standing bare in every sense, physically, emotionally, spiritually. It's about the fragile courage it takes to risk everything for something real. Disclaimer: this content is for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. My name is Elise, and I never imagined I'd be telling this story. If you had asked me just one day before, I would have laughed off the idea that I could ever break a boundary I had guarded so tightly. But life has a funny way of dismantling your convictions when you least expect it. That night didn't erupt in chaos. It unfolded with eerie calm, like a tide slowly shifting. I didn't feel fear. Just readiness. The house was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that wraps itself around you, heavy and still, like it's waiting for something to happen. The only sound was the gentle whir of the ceiling fan, its blades carving lazy shadows across the wooden floor. It felt like the entire house was holding its breath. Earlier that day, he looked at me, not with words, not even with a smile, but with a gaze that lingered longer than it should have. A gaze that said everything we'd both been trying not to say for years. Caleb. He was the man who lived 2 doors down. A carpenter. Steady hands. A guarded smile. He fixed my porch 3 years ago, and we've been circling each other ever since, never quite friends, never quite lovers. Always something simmering beneath the surface. That day, his eyes said what his lips didn't dare, that we were standing on the edge of something we could no longer ignore. We'd brushed against this line before. A lingering touch. A laugh that lasted too long. A glance that held too much. But that night was different. I walked out of my room, no words, no second thoughts. Just bare skin, bare soul. The dim hallway light spilled across my shoulders like a spotlight, shadows clinging to the walls like they were watching. He stood at the far end. Frozen. His eyes locked on me. No lust, not yet. Just a stunned reverence. Like I was both a dream and a danger. He stepped closer. Slow. Deliberate. I pressed against the wall, the coolness of the plaster grounding me. His hands hovered inches away, trembling with restraint. It wasn't hesitation, it was reverence. A kind of awe. Like he knew once he touched me, there would be no going back. I could feel the battle raging inside him. Touch me, or walk away. Say it, or stay silent? But the truth is, I had already jumped. There was no turning around. He leaned in, his breath brushing my cheek. Close enough to feel, not close enough to touch. Then, just when I thought he would kiss me, he whispered. Not a confession. Not a question. Just 5 words that shattered everything. But we'll get to that. Let me rewind. A little. Camden, Maine. A quiet coastal town. I moved here 5 years ago after my marriage ended with a thud, like a book slammed shut mid-sentence. I rented a small house with chipped white paint and a porch that creaked when you stepped on it. Solitude was supposed to heal me. It did. Slowly. Painfully. I edited books for a living. Drank coffee in silence. Took long walks by the harbor where the fog rolled in thick like a secret. It was simple. It was lonely. Then Caleb came. He was fixing the railing on my porch one summer morning when we first met. Shirt damp with sweat. A pencil tucked behind his ear. He had this way of talking without saying much, just a smirk, a nod, and the occasional ma'am that made me feel older and younger at once. Over the years, we became something undefinable. We texted about nonsense. We drank wine on my porch in silence. We never touched. We never talked about the way we almost touched. There was always tension, but never release. Until that night. When I stepped out, I wasn't just naked. I was exposed. Vulnerable in a way I'd never allowed myself to be. Not just to him, to myself. The look on his face was everything. Want. Fear. Wonder. He stepped forward. 1 inch. Then another. But still, no touch. And just when I thought he would finally break, his phone buzzed. The sound sliced through the air like a blade. He reached into his pocket, his body suddenly tense. His eyes flicked to the screen, then back to me. Something had changed. His jaw clenched. His shoulders stiffened. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he said. I blinked. Find out what? He looked pained, torn. It was her. The call. Lydia. She's back. The name hit me like a splash of cold water. Lydia. I had only heard fragments. She was the ghost that haunted his silence. The woman who'd left him without warning, 4 years ago. The wound he never spoke of but always carried. And now she was back. Suddenly, we were both naked in that hallway. Not just skin, but history. Wounds. Secrets. He looked at me, torn between past and present. Between safety and risk. I stood still, heart pounding, waiting for him to decide. Would he run to her? Or stay and face me, face this? He looked down at the phone again. Then did something I didn't expect. He turned it off. He set it on the table. He stepped closer. "No fear this time," he said. "Just truth." His forehead rested against mine. His hands didn't roam. They rested gently against my hips. No rush. Just breath. Just presence. And that's when I knew, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Over the next few days, he told me everything. About Lydia. About how her leaving had gutted him. About how he never truly trusted himself again. She had returned, claiming she'd changed. Said she wanted to start over. But Caleb had already started to let go. That night, when I stepped into the light, I wasn't just bearing myself. I was offering him a choice. He chose. He chose me. Not in the movies. Not in the fairy tales. But in real life. In quiet conversations on my porch. In soft confessions over tea. In laughter that came easier each day. He told me he didn't want a grand romance. Just honesty. Presence. The small, scary act of showing up. And so we did. Night after night. We didn't leap. We built. He told me about Lydia in full. The highs. The chaos. The crash. He wasn't painting her as a villain. Just someone who wasn't meant to stay. I told him about my ex. How I stopped recognizing myself in that marriage. How I feared I'd become someone too broken to be loved again. But slowly, through all those moments, we saw each other fully. One night, he reached for my hand. Not dramatic. Just a quiet thread woven between fingers. "I'm here," he said. "I'm not perfect. But I'm choosing this." I smiled, heart full. "That's enough." And it was. What do you think? Would you trust Caleb after everything? Would you have walked out that night or stayed behind the safety of a locked door? What happens next? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Will Lydia come back stronger? Or will two people, raw and real, finally find what they were always afraid to reach for? Because sometimes, the most seductive thing isn't what happens behind closed doors. It's what happens when you finally open them. Part 2, when the past knocks again. Lydia didn't stay silent for long. 3 days after that night, there was a knock at Caleb's door. He didn't tell me right away. I saw it in his eyes first, the flicker of discomfort, like someone remembering a nightmare while awake. "She came by," he said casually, too casually, as we passed coffee back and forth between us on my porch. I blinked. And? He looked down, thumb brushing the rim of his cup. She asked me to talk. Did you? A pause. Yes. I owed her that much. The words landed heavy, like stones dropped in shallow water. He saw the shift in me, how my posture stiffened. Nothing happened, Elise. I promise. It wasn't like that. I told her about you. I told her I was done looking backward. And yet, the ache didn't leave my chest. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I didn't trust what old love could still stir in someone. Even a ghost can feel alive if you let it linger too long. He reached for my hand. You're not a rebound. You're not a distraction. You're the person I stayed for. But I couldn't help the question that whispered through me, was he ready to let go of Lydia, completely?